Hello, everyone. This is Independent Conservative. Thank you all for joining me. So I told you guys I was going to be bringing you some more information on the vice presidential debate. Well, in this particular video, what I want to talk about is how the moderators questioned J.D. Vance on his position in reference to Trump and how he disagreed with Trump and spoke negatively about him prior to him becoming his vice president running mate here. And J.D. Vance admitted that he did say these negative things about Trump, that he was, against a lot of the things that Trump was pushing. But he said, I was very open, but he responded by saying, I was very open about that and very honest about that. He says, but I fell for the media lies. So let's get right into this article. I'm going to read you this article, and I want you guys to listen in on a audio clip from the actual debate that, once again, I had an opportunity to actually sit through. So let's get right into this. Senator J.D. Vance admitted that he had been, quote, wrong with his past opinions about former President Donald Trump, noting he had, quote, believed some of the dishonest fabrications about Trump's record from the media. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the media. When asked during the vice presidential debate between Minnesota Governor Tim Walz about his previous comments made about Trump, Vance explained that while he has, quote, disagreed with Trump, he has been, quote, extremely open about his past views of Trump. And so I'm going to let you guys listen in on this audio clip here.
You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum.
Yeah, that's what he said. I mean, they only got a few minutes of that there, but yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said, but here the article goes on to say, prior to the 2016 presidential election, Vance previously described Trump as, quote, an idiot and as being reprehensible, according to Reuters. During an interview with Fox News in July, Vance admitted that he had criticized Trump, explaining that Trump had been, quote, a great president and that he changed Vance's mind. End of article. And I respect someone who's honest. And that does happen, people change their position all the time. It's interesting because the situation with Kamala Harris and and President Biden, during their debate, Kamala Harris called Biden a racist and all of this kind of stuff when they were running for the president. I think they were, doing the campaign, on their campaign during the debate. She accused Biden of being a racist. I mean, straight out racist. And yet Biden made her his VP. So how do you explain that, right? Could this be the same situation? It's like, wait, man, you spoke all these negative things about him, and now all of a sudden you his vice president. Could that all be planned? I don't know. But I feel that the explanation that J.D. Vance gave in changing his position in reference to Trump was a good explanation, because people can change their minds about someone they may have disagreed with. He admitted, here's the thing though, he admitted that he had begun to believe in the media lies about Trump. Now, what's interesting about that is that the other day at work, Monday, actually, before the debate, obviously, I was speaking with one of my coworkers, and this is the coworker who's a Republican, so we have the good discussions, okay? And the incident of the mainstream media came up, and he had mentioned something along the line as why people says I hope y'all understand why people believe these Democrats and why they embrace this kind of stuff is just crazy. The things they say and policies they push, and I says, well, it's because of the media. I said the mainstream media pushes the narrative and basically conditions people to believe these type of things about Trump or anyone on the right or any kind of Republican. I explained to him and also to another co-worker who was kind of like in the middle now, because he said he has family members. One of his family members is a few of his family members rather are Trump supporters, but they're kind of fearful. They don't want to be around people that's anti-Trump. So I began to explain to him the same issue. I says, well, a lot of this mentality comes from the mainstream media. I said the mainstream media is over 90% liberal. Most of the reporters and journalists in the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all of these, for the most part, are left leaning, and the owners of these news sources are mostly left leaning. So the narrative you're going to hear from them is going to always, for the most part, be a negative spin on Republicans and conservatives, and particularly Trump in particular. And I said, you're not going to hear anything positive about Trump from them. So if the masses of people are hearing this from the mainstream media all the time, this is what I was telling them, these co-workers, then that's what they're going to believe. That's why they believe what they believe. They believe what they believe because they've been brainwashed into believing this kind of thought patterns from the mainstream media, which is controlled by the left. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not AI. It's not some far right conspiracy. No, it's not none of that. It's what it is. In fact, if you read one of Mark Dice's book, yes, Mark Dice, I have all of his books, and yes, he does thorough researches, and he documents this in his book on mainstream media. I think it's called a liberal media complex, industrial complex. He talks about and gives great documented detail on how since the 1980s, there was a report that was conducted, a study that was conducted that essentially said over 90% of the mainstream media outlets and reporters and journalists are Democrats and left-leaning. And then another one was conducted, I believe, in the 1990s that stated the same thing. So the people, the reporters and journalists are oftentimes biased towards people that are conservatives, even when they don't believe they're being biased, because they've been conditioned to believe the rhetoric. So yeah, it's people believe these things because of the mainstream media. And in a sense of J.D. Vance here, he said he began to believe that the mainstream media lies about Trump. He was one of the victims, if you want to call it that. He was one of the victims of the lies and the mind control and propaganda coming from the mainstream media. And when this is all that you're being exposed to, when this is all you're hearing over and over and over again, Trump is going to be a dictator. J.D. Vance is evil. He's nothing but a hillbilly and all this kind of stuff. And you're hearing all these negative things, and Trump is going to be the next Hitler and all of this kind of stuff. And every day, how do you think most Americans are going to think? Particularly those that are so boxed in. So boxed in their mindset, so boxed in their mentality. Most people do not go outside what they hear on the news, the mainstream news. They don't look, for the most part, into any kind of alternative news sources. And the reason why they don't look at a lot of alternative news sources, and I've suggested this to a friend of mine, I don't know if she's really doing it or not. Why don't people just don't listen? But I says, they're usually, people are usually not going to go outside and look anywhere else. And anywhere else in terms of alternative news sources, because the reporters and journalists and the talking heads that they interview on their shows and platforms are constantly telling them that the alternative news sources are filled with a bunch of conservative, far-right conspiracy theorists. So if you're constantly being told that anything outside the mainstream media is a bunch of conspiracy theories, and that's constantly being pumped in your mind over and over again, that's classic mind control. Come on, man. People think the way they think because of what they're exposed to. People do what they do oftentimes because of what they're exposed to. The mind is the control center of the entire body. You can control the mind, you can control the body, you can control the outlook, you can control the worldview of the people that watch it. Okay? So it is what it is. And J.D. Vance fell for it. So, but when he began to see, according to what he said, when he began to see the actual results of Trump's policies that were actually helping American people, he began to change his position. Okay? So it happens. It happens. And J.D. Vance, I know because I heard him say it. I watched the debate. He explained his changing of position very, very well. He articulated it very well. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. Yeah, I mean, he changed his position, but he explained it. He explained why he changed his position, because he had begun to believe the mainstream media lies, like so many millions of Americans, unfortunately, have been conditioned to believe about Trump. And then when you ask the average person, you ask the average individual, and I've done this quite often. I've stopped doing it now because people just going. But I've done this quite often in the past. Ask them, could you give me some valid evidence that Trump is a racist, that he's going to be the next Hitler? They could never really fully give it to me in any real detail. They could never explain it to me. Well, if you can't explain it to me, if you can't articulate it to me, then don't you think there might be a problem with that? It's almost hard to get people to actually think. It's almost like if you try to get them to think, they're going to, oh my God, I gotta think. I gotta actually use my brain. I gotta actually do this. Are you kidding? I'd rather just feel. I just rather feel my way. I just rather be emotional and not think, because thinking hurts. We are so messed up in this country that thinking hurts for the average American. It's a crying shame. But let's see what happens in November. Let's see what happens in November. Let's see if people get rid of their emotions and decide to do something that hurts. That's think. That's think. They may have to put up with a little bit of mental pain when it comes to the voting, okay? Because they're going to have to think their way into this voting situation. They can't emotionalize their way. They're not going to be able to feel their way in this, hopefully. They're going to have to think their way. They're going to have to say, wait a minute, something's not right with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and all the glaring contradictions and open borders and all this. Something just ain't right. Let me think about this for a moment. And it might induce a headache, but that headache is not going to last. If they use their brain and actually think about the situation, the outcome will more than likely be better for them and millions of other Americans. So that's what I had to say about that. Hey, J.D. Vance changed his mind. He did what he had to do. And if people learn how to change their mind and not be brainwashed by the mainstream media that's controlled by Marxists and communists and progressives who mean the destruction of this country, then the better off they will be. So that's what I had to say about that. What do you guys think? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. God bless you all. See you again.